Welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Marcus Carlson. You can profit from people with disabilities. That may sound like a cynical and rather politically incorrect statement, but it is essentially the message of my guest today. He argues disabled people are an untapped resource and hiring disabled workers could cut hiring costs and boost profitability. Randy Lewis used to be Senior Vice President of the drugstore chain Walgreens in the United States, a company that now has more than 8,000 stores. He was in charge of logistics, essentially the art of getting goods to the right store at the right time, and he launched a disability hiring program for the company. He tells the story in his recent book, No Greatness Without Goodness. Randy, thank you very much indeed for joining us from London today, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, at the start of your book, or in your book really, you tell the story of your autistic son Austin, and what it's like raising a child with a disability. How did that experience shape you professionally as an executive?
Well, I got to see life through the eyes of my child, and also got to see what it's like for parents that have a child with a disability and realize that I would end up sharing the same hope and dream that they do, that is to live one day longer than our child, because we know what's going to happen after we're no longer here, and we worry about who's going to take care of them. Will they be able to take care of themselves? Will they live safely and have opportunities? And my son, surprisingly, well, I guess it wasn't a surprise, he exceeded our expectations in so many different ways. Even though he didn't speak until he was age 10, he ended up learning how to drive, doing so many things we never dreamed. And then that was in one role, knowing that there were probably others like that out there that we had tended to overlook. And in my professional life, we were in a position, we were hiring about 1,000 people a year. Who's going to do something about this? In our world of influence and having all this power, who's going to make a difference? There's such a huge need. It was just taking the attitude, why can't we? Mm-hmm. So we just kind of opened our eyes to that possibility, and it moved out from there.
Tell us what you did at Walgreens exactly. You decided essentially that a third of your new hires in a particular distribution center would be disabled. Tell us about that process.
Well, we had tried on an experimental basis here and there, hiring people with disabilities, sometimes out of school programs, sometimes in association with agencies. And that was successful, but it wasn't scalable, those ways of doing it. And we had an opportunity, we were planning a new generation of distribution center that was going to be our mission critical. It would be our most expensive and one of our largest. And we wanted to build it in such a way that we would enable a large group of people with disabilities, people who may have never had a job before, to be just as effective as people without disabilities. So we were going to hold everybody to the same standards, pay the same wages, work side by side in a completely inclusive environment. And that was our plan. And off we went, knowing that we didn't have all the answers, but we would, like anything else in business, we would make mistakes, and we would learn from them, and we would adjust and go forward.
And that was really one of the key things in this program, wasn't it? That a disabled workmate is a workmate and colleague like any other, that they have the same pay, they work with the same conditions. That's really key, as I say.
Certainly, if this was going to work, we're a business, not a charity. So we were going to hold everyone to the same standard. This is not a giveaway. This is not a make work. This is not a carve out. This is fair pay, fair performance. Everybody is equal.
Now, what kind of disabilities are we talking about here? I suppose a lot of people will be asking that. What kind of disabilities do the people you hire have?
Well, it's interesting you ask. A lot of people ask the other way, which disabilities can you not hire successfully? Truth is, we haven't found one yet. Now, that may seem odd, but one of the things we learned, that everything is a spectrum. Everything is a spectrum. We can't hire every blind person, but a large portion we can. We could probably hire every deaf person. We found that is not much of a disability in the kind of work that we do. Can't hire everybody with autism, but we can hire a lot. So everything, we haven't found anything yet. We got to learn about some we didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about the benefits that you found with your program. You managed to decrease hiring costs, for instance, or hiring costs came down, I believe.
Well, one thing we found out, first of all, we found out the performance was the same. Matter of fact, it was a little bit higher in the group of people without disabilities, so the performance was the same. But like you say, our hiring costs went down because our retention was better, our absenteeism was less, our safety was better, and half the cost for people with disabilities than it was people without disabilities. And the most incredible thing we found was the impact on the typically able, those without disabilities, the impact on making us better leaders, better managers, and that those better listeners, and those skills would extend, people tell us, back into their homes and with their friends. They become better parents, they become better spouses, better friends, better citizens.
Now, as you said before, Walgreens, of course, it's a business, it's not a charity. How difficult was it seeing that to convince your colleagues and the board of your company that this was the right way to go? It did carry with it an initial investment cost. How did you convince, as I say, your colleagues and the board?
Well, I mean, there's certainly, in any group, when you come up with a new idea, the first reaction to anybody is why? Why change? We seem to be successful the way we're doing things. I think there were some skeptics, but quite frankly, for every skeptic, there were probably 10 people who wanted this to be a reality. The dream is, gee whiz, we could do something completely different, and if we would be successful, we might change the workplace for everybody. This was by getting everyone engaged into that dream, that's where it took its power. It was no longer my story. It wasn't a story of an executive with a child with a disability, because everybody knows someone or holds someone in their heart with a disability that has a challenge. So that it was tapping into that longing that we can make a difference for something bigger than us. And quite frankly, the presentation to the board was quite simple. It was essentially, we're building this new generation of building. It's our most cost-effective, best return on invested capital. People like to hear that in business. It's going to be our most efficient. And everybody said, yay. And then when I said 1/3 of the workforce will be people with disabilities who may have never had a job, there was only one key question. What if it doesn't work? And the answer was, it's like anything else. If it doesn't work, we'll adjust and move forward. And they said, okay.
We'll go back.
The only thing they've said since then is, thank you.
Okay, the essential idea is there that you can always go back to the drawing board. Still, though, a lot of managers today, that they say that they want a diverse workforce. That's what they're supposed to say. But when you look at reality, it doesn't really seem to be reflected, that statement that, yes, diversity is a good thing.
Well, it's interesting. We use a lot of that in the U.S., diversity. What we've found the more powerful word is inclusion. When people think diversity, they think difference. Why would I want to be around somebody that's different? What we found out that we were so much more alike than we were different, that once it became about inclusion, it became, why wouldn't we? It's an unjust situation, and that's what we found. It's an interesting thing. We found that disabilities will trump any other group. Once you see a person with a disability as us, then all those other differences, race, gender, creed, whatever, those are nothing. I don't know how it is in other countries. In a lot of parts of the United States, cafeterias tend to self-segregate. One group sits with another. In those buildings with high number of people with disabilities, everybody mixes. All the races, gender, everybody mixes. You can't tell. It's kind of like a mishmash of everything.
Now, other companies like Procter & Gamble and Marks & Spencer's in the UK, they've emulated your program. Do you think that there is a risk that it becomes a little bit of a gimmick, a public relations stunt? Is there that kind of risk?
Well, if it does, how anybody gets there is okay with me. I was at Marks & Spencer this week. They had come over probably 3 years ago, so I've been waiting to get up to Nottingham to see their center, and they're 25% of those people, their workforce is people with disabilities. And what you see there is not a lot of people with disabilities, you see people doing the job. That's what it's about. Ultimately, as a business, we have to say, we're not a charity, we're a business, we have to accomplish a goal. Stunts do not sustain themselves. This is how this works. This is doing the job.
But
That's all people with disabilities wants, an opportunity.
Figures, though, at least from the United States, show that disabled people are actually a smaller part now of the workforce than before the financial crisis started in earnest. Are disabled employees the first ones to go when times are tough?
You make a great point. We looked at numbers in the Great Recession. People with disabilities left the workforce at 5 times the rate of all other groups. And there's lots of thinking about that. Last hired, first fired. But I think a lot of that's because of perhaps what they call these carve-outs, specialized jobs. When somebody has one of those jobs, those are the most vulnerable. But in our case, we didn't do that. That's why we said same pay, same performance. And I think that's the most lasting proof of we won't have that turnover in the recession. And we didn't experience that kind of turnover in the Great Recession for us.
All right, Randy Lewis, we're going to have to wrap it up there because we have run out of time. I want to thank you, though, for speaking to us. A reminder there, once again, that was Randy Lewis, the author of No Greatness Without Goodness. And with that, we're going to end this show. Thanks for watching France 24, and do stay with us.